Hey, what's up, everyone? It's your boy Sphen, and we're back at it again with the politics. Although this time we're actually talking about science. You may have heard, but recently, I think it was last week, we passed a climate threshold. So what happened was that the global average temperature for 2 days exceeded plus 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. So, what does that mean, you may be asking? If you look at the Paris Climate Accords, all of the global leaders agreed that they wanted to curtail global warming to a maximum of 2 degrees Celsius above pre industrial levels. And so, last week, for just 2 days, we broke that threshold. Now, that doesn't mean that the Climate Paris Accords are over now and that it's too late. What they're referring to in those agreements is that if for the whole year, the average increase in temperature compared to pre-industrial levels is 2 degrees Celsius, across the globe for the whole year, that would be the worst case scenario. What we're seeing now is only 2 days of those temperatures, so you don't need to be too alarmist, but this is very, very telling, because the Earth has never been this hot before. 2023 is actually the hottest year on record, and those 2 days are some of the hottest days on record. And you have to understand, last year was also the hottest year on record, and the year before that, I'm pretty sure, was also the hottest year on record. Quick correction, it wasn't 2 or 3 years in a row, it was actually 9 years in a row that were the hottest on record. And so you may be wondering, how is that possible? It's because each year is hotter than the last, and the year after that is hotter than that. So we're just going to keep getting hotter and hotter years until we actually do hit that 2 degrees Celsius for the whole year. And mind you, 2 degrees Celsius was the worst case scenario for the Paris Climate Accords. The countries actually all agreed that they were going to try to only get to 1.5 degrees Celsius. So the fact that we're seeing these temperatures now is alarming. It just is. I mean, you'd have to be closing your eyes and putting your hands in your ears for the last 3 years to not see the trajectory we're going at. I mean, look at the California and Oregon wildfires in 2020 that turned the sky orange for weeks. Look at the fires in Australia. Look at the massive amounts of flooding in Pakistan. We're talking literally a third of a country underwater. That is insanity. Look at the flooding in New York that's happened the last 2 or 3 years. Look at how our hurricane seasons have been worse, and how our polar vortexes have been worse. And look at Texas being completely shut off from the grid because of all the storms. Look at the fact that we had a hurricane in California. That's not supposed to happen. We don't have hurricanes here. The water's too cold here. It shouldn't be happening. I mean, I could keep listing the examples. There's the Danube River drying out, one of the rivers in China drying out, I think that was last year. This is all just completely insane. And yet people will still post on X.com like, oh, you can't prove that it's man-made, or look at all these climate cultist, alarmist people getting all hysterical. I mean, there really hasn't been much political energy for climate change in the last couple years, not even on the Democratic ticket. It's very, very sad to see. And I'm just gonna say it again, as I've been saying on this channel, if you care about the issues, vote Marianne. Because Biden, as good as the Inflation Reduction Act was, he also approved the Willow Project and many, many, many other oil projects. I mean, he's been directly responsible for, many, many gigatons of carbon dioxide being released in the atmosphere, and the Willow Project would be absolutely devastating in that regard. So, try and vote for someone who actually cares about the climate, because it matters. I mean, we're going to start having food and water shortages in the next few years if things don't change. Let me be very clear. The worst case of climate change is not the end of the world. Some people might say that, but they're actually being a bit hyperbolic, and they probably don't know the exact science behind it. Because the planet Earth is very resilient. It can adjust to extreme changes in the climate, and it has in the past. But do you know what comes along with those extreme changes in climate that the Earth has been okay through? It's called mass extinction events. Now, we could be on the list this time. I mean, that's the worst case scenario. The Earth will be fine. There will be lots of animals and plants that can adapt to a super hot climate with lots of extremes of hot and cold weather, lots of extreme storms and arid deserts and flooding. Lots of things are going to be able to survive that. Lots of plants, animals, the cockroaches will live through damn near anything. But what about us, human beings? Is the planet going to be hospitable to us? That's the question, right? I mean, if the climate changes so drastically, it may not be hospitable for human life anymore. You know, parts of Saudi Arabia are projected to be completely inhospitable. Like, you shouldn't be going outside unless you have protective gear. And that's projected in the next, 10 years or so. So, I just wanted to correct the record on that misnomer of the end state of climate change. The world will not end. The world will live on, but the question is, are we going to be there with it? And the worst case that a lot more politically and sociologically minded climate activists think is that there would be global war before any of the worst things happen. Once we start having water shortages, you damn bet there's going to be water wars. There's going to be wars over land for growing crops once that gets more limited. And so we might see a total societal collapse into anarchy as people scramble to fight over resources. I know I got very doom and gloom in this video, but I just wanted to make the position of climate activists clear as to what's happening, why it's important, and what the end result could be if we don't course correct. But let me try and end on a hopeful note. We still have time. We still have lots of time to course correct. I mean, we could reach net zero carbon emissions in the US in 5 years if we really tried. It's actually not as hard as people make it out to be. Of course, we would need something drastic, like a Green New Deal, but it could be done. I mean, the original New Deal happened, and we didn't see a complete collapse of the economy or whatever. God, I don't even know. It's so hard to engage with people who take austerity politics seriously. How are we going to pay for it, they say. And this is on both the left and the right. It's really, really hard to engage with people who are worried about the government spending too much money, because that is not a serious concern at all. We're in the USA, for crying out loud. We can spend as much money as we want. We could go into billions of debt. We could go into more debt, and we would see no repercussions for it. I mean, seriously, do people think the economy is actually going to collapse because the government spends too much money? That is not how the economy has collapsed the last 2 or 3 times. Okay? Sorry, it's just it's just so illogical. I mean, even if the US is in trillions of debt, no one's gonna come collect. We'll fucking bomb them and shoot them before we let them take our money. There's no serious threat of bankruptcy. There's no serious threat of, hyperinflation from the government spending too much money. We have to be willing to put the resources into dramatic changes if we want to avoid the worst cases. So, this video got a bit long-winded and rambly, but I care a lot about this stuff. So, if you want to see more climate change news, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe